Sometimes it takes a documentary filmmaker a while to get the essence of the story they're trying to tell. In the case of Sabbath Queen, filmmaker Sandi DuBowski needed 21 years to really get a handle on his central character, Amichai Lau-Lavie, and Amichai's journey from being the son of a Holocaust survivor and the nephew of the chief rabbi of Israel to his transformation into using his radical drag queen persona of Hadassa Gold, a Hungarian-accented widow in a blonde wig, to ask the big questions. Where are the boundaries? What are the implications of turning from tradition? What does it mean to be a Jew? Following up his landmark 2001 documentary, Trembling Before God, Sandi DuBowski has created a film where through Amichai's journey, he asks the questions we all must face, regardless of our faith, who we are and who we will be. As Sabbath Queen gets ready to open in Los Angeles following a successful run in New York, the New York Times Critics Pick, rave reviews, sold-out shows, and in advance of its rollout into arthouses across the country, we welcome filmmaker Sandi DuBowski inside the Arthouse for a conversation about his film and the role it can play in healing a divided world. Join us inside the Arthouse now. Hi, my name is Raphael Sparge.
And I'm Greg Lumley.
And welcome to another episode of Inside the Arthouse. We are here today. Take it, Greg.
Hi, Sandy.
Hey, Greg.
But we're here today with Sandi DuBowski, the director of Sabbath Queen, which is his new film. But Sandy and I met 20 plus years ago when we showed your first feature documentary, Trembling Before God. So it's nice to see you again.
It's really good to be back.
The two films are connected in a way, not just thematically, but,
So Trembling Before God is about Hasidic and Orthodox Jews that are lesbian or gay. And I went to Jerusalem to look for people to be in the film. And everyone kept saying, well, you should speak to the chief rabbi's nephew because he's gay. So I met Amichai and I asked him to be in the film. And he refused because he's too much of a diva and he wanted his own movie. He actually told me I don't do collage. So let me also say, to be fair, he was not Orthodox anymore. He was like post-denominational and post-Orthodox. So the film didn't really hold his story, but we became dear friends. And after 5 years of friendship and all of that trust and, we became started shooting the film. And I started filming with him in 2003. So it's been 21 years of collaboration and creativity and documenting his life.
Sandi, the film is incredible. It just knocked me to the floor. For what it's worth, in terms of kind of, most persistent director, seeing it all the way through to the end award, 21 years.
You beat Richard Linklater. That guy's a rank amateur.
I'm telling you.
Well, everyone kept saying, oh, it's like Boyhood. I was like, it's like Rabbihood.
My question, of course, is how did you know when it was done? How did you not sort of essentially, stop or pull the plug at any other, places along the way? Right. And what was the place that you sort of said, okay, I don't want to film anymore. We've arrived. How do you determine that?
Right. Well, I would say Act 1 and Act 2, Amichai's worlds are so kaleidoscopic.
Yeah.
There's the drag Rebbitzin Hadassa character. There's his Holocaust Orthodox family. There's him being a queer biodad of 3 kids. There's the storytelling performance and his lab shul. There's so many worlds of Amichai. So in some sense, Act 1 and Act 2, we're moving through his life in all these worlds. And then Act 3 was the hardest because, how do you end this epic journey?
Yeah.
But Amichai made a decision around interfaith marriage. He decided first to become a rabbi, and that was a real twist, that I didn't expect. And then he decided to do it conservative. So, I filmed that and I thought, well, when he's ordained, that ceremony, that's the end of the film. He becomes a rabbi. And then I realized that in the mythic journey, it's not about getting a title. It's about what you do with that title in the world. And that's when he faced a really consequential choice. And when he made that choice, he actually paid a price. And it was paying a price that for me had narrative consequence and felt like the ending of Act 3. So that's when we decided that it was really a microcosm of so many of the issues that we were dealing with. And that felt like the end of the film.
Over these 20 years, obviously you see this extraordinary man with this incredible legacy of 38 rabbis going back 1,000 years in Israel. And you see him kind of find himself, which is, not defined by his past, but essentially informed by it. And you take this trip with him, but here we are, perhaps at one of the more consequential moments of what it means to be a Jew, and or a religious person in the world, but particularly with the crisis that we're in the midst of. You land at a moment where you're asking all of the big questions about, what it means to live in a world of tradition and or also, with new ideas, and how do both of those, align. It's so perfectly timed to be sort of at this moment to really sort of help us sort of navigate.
Watching Amichai navigate this real paradigm shift in the Jewish world, in the wider world. I mean, we're all dealing with really deep, intense forces, that are provoking so many questions for us on so many levels of ancestry, of tradition, of family, of our government, of war, of history, of, it's sometimes an unbearable time, and a traumatic time. And I think Amichai really meets that moment. And people are finding that he's really speaking to all of the wrestling that people are doing within themselves, within their families, within their communities, because Amichai himself is wrestling. And we're witnessing him, and we're, as audience, mirroring him and connecting to him and actually finding so much hope. I find it quite incredible that, I did Trembling Before God. I spent 6 years crisscrossing the globe trying to find any Orthodox parent who had a gay or lesbian child who would be on camera and participate in the film. And after 6 years, I found 0.
Oh my God.
Fast forward now. Yeah. Fast forward now to the present day. And there's Amichai's mother in the film. And there's his Orthodox rabbi straight brother in the film. This is major. This is really major. And Amichai and his brother, they don't necessarily agree. They're on different pages politically, ideologically, but what they do is that they disagree with love and respect. And in our time, when things are so toxic and so polarized, and some relationships have really fallen apart in these past years or in the past year, that there's some role model for me and for many audience members about watching these two brothers navigate complicated terrain in that love and respect. So I think it is meeting a moment in a very poignant and powerful way.
Yeah, I'm not sure how, you sort of downplay it in the film, but how major it is that Benny, his brother, not only agrees to appear in the film, not only agrees to talk about his brother as a person and not someone who died, I mean, if you want to go to the extreme of this tradition, but comes to, a religious organization that he really, probably doesn't consider to be legitimate, and yet, is there celebrating with his brother. I mean, that is huge.
I mean, I waited 13 years to ask his brother to be in the film.
No kidding.
Okay, so it did take some time. So you saw this evolution in the world and in the way we relate to it as you were making the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I was really patient, and
is that because they wouldn't agree to be in the film, or because you weren't ready to ask them?
I think it was that. I think it might have been both. I think there was something when Amichai became a rabbi, like his brother, a rabbi, that there's some kind of, level that was reached. And I was able to really interact with his brother there. And, and I felt the opening. I felt like a permission. And so I asked him, and I flew to Jerusalem like a month later, and we filmed this 2-hour interview. And it's amazing because it really is only a 2-hour interview, but it feels, and we build it editorially like an arc.
Yes,
An arc
yes, you
from
do.
rejection to acceptance. And there's a moment where Benny says in the film, like the closet is death. And I was just stunned. I just was crying when he said that. It was so moving to hear such a traditional religious leader say that. Many queer people are so scarred by their treatment under religion. And so that's a major statement. And Benny saw the film. And
I was going to ask, what was his reaction?
He saw it in December, and he wrote me this, he wrote me an email, and it was like definitely one of those emails that you're like very scared to open.
Yes. Whoa.
And I opened it, and it was just really beautiful praise. And he gave his blessing to this film. And I think for Amichai, if he hadn't received that blessing, he couldn't do what we're doing, in the world with the movie.
For people who haven't seen the film, it's not, of course, even just that he's gay, against the contrast of kind of.
Well, it's not just that he's gay, which is family.
Queen.
Yeah, well, there's that, but then but that he takes these parts of his, as we see over the course of the film, that he takes these parts of his, his estrangement, I guess, from traditional, and then brings it back in. Because now it's not, I'm not going to run away from everything I know, because he has an incredible amount of knowledge, just, the education that he received in his upbringing. I'm going to share this with the world as a Jew, as a teacher, and then ultimately as a rabbi. And that's really what's, that is what's, so transformative about, that's what we see in the movie. That's the story.
And he's definitely not Orthodox, and he has a lab shul, which he calls a, part laboratory, part synagogue. And their tagline is everybody friendly, artist driven, God optional, pop-up experimental congregation. I mean, that is really quite radical to have a God-optional synagogue that, invites people who are atheist, who are secular, who are skeptical. Like, it's a real open door for people who don't have to declare any belief. They just have to show up as who they are with all their doubts. And, it's a very welcoming space for many people who don't find an address for themselves, for their kids, for their family. And so Amichai's pushing on many, many fronts. And it is a pretty extraordinary family that has, gone in the winds of Amichai and embraced him in all of his complexity.
It's really true. Talking about the complexity, there's that moment, and you have it on film, where he kind of embodies this character that she, kind of. He says that he'd had a couple of drinks, and so he was sort of comfortable enough. But there's a moment where she starts speaking, and it has. I don't know how to say it any other way. It's almost like he's channeling something, that it's sort of coming through the deepest part of him, and it's sort of almost otherworldly, and you kind of capture that on camera. Was that your experience as well, as you were watching, because you were there in the room where it happened?
Oh yeah, that's really the origin. I was so entranced with this Rebbetzin Hadassa, this, drag queen, mystical character. In some ways, she allowed Amichai to become a rabbi. I don't think he felt like he could do spiritual leadership without the kind of costume, because of the background he came from. Right. And so he had the wig and the mask, and, and he was doing these performances that were, electric. And I was really drawn to that. That's what I was filming more in the early parts of Sabbath Queen. And then that changed. He shifted.
Well, first, let's meet Hadassa Gross, because we have a little clip that we can look at.
Perfect.
One day, I was MC of some kind of event. I had one vodka too many, and she emerged out of my head like Athena.
I never Hadassa Gold. So wonderful to be here tonight for this beautiful homosexualist event. I'm not homosexualist, of course, but I'm in favor of everything.
I've created this fictitious character.
I am a rebbetzin, which this means I am the widow or the wife of a rabbi. In this case, I am the widow of 6.
This Hungarian sex advisor, matchmaker, Kabbalist, and my father's nemesis.
This is a fairy tale, but it's from the Bible, so it is true. You understand?
One of the best ways to tap the sacred inside ourselves is through the Joker, through humor, through winking at it. You can really touch the profound.
Yeah, what a great clip that is. And that's exactly the moment we're talking about.
Right. Well, look, there's a long term. I mean, Amichai talks in the clip about the Joker character, and obviously and traditionally, I guess in theater, the Joker is the one who's telling the truth.
Right. Right.
But even in the Jewish tradition, the holiday of Purim, and I don't know to what extent Hadassa emerged on Purim.
Oh, she did.
She did? Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. It's a holiday about wearing masks. I mean, Esther wears this mask to get into become the queen. And we put masks on Purim, but then we have to remember that some we need to take them off, and some people aren't able to take those masks off sometimes.
Right.
The masking is for many closeted people is that they put on this other mask of not being gay. So it's become a holiday. Anyway. I don't want to get too inside. It's inside the Arthouse, not inside the cheder.
Yeah, no, I think even just Amichai seeing footage of Hadassa is because it's also the holiday of carnival. It's a holiday of drunkenness. It's a holiday where we do turn everything upside down, to get to deeper truths. So, Amichai, just watching the footage of Hadassa for him, that we filmed was so revelatory.
Yeah, talk about that, and then talk about his experience of watching the film, in total as well. Or did you show it to him along the way? Did you engage him in parts of the cut?
I did. I created a trailer and a few scenes. I did a lot of fundraising and benefit parties.
Yeah.
So he would see those. But really, I think when he saw the film before I finished it, because I wanted to, we had an agreement where he would have meaningful input, but I would have final cut. He was just stunned. He could not believe all these moments that I captured of his life. I mean, I am his official biographer.
I would say.
I'm kind of like an Amichai-ologist,
Yes.
So I really, I've been with him through, the vast majority of our adult life. So it's a profound relationship of being a director and him being a protagonist, of us being friends, of him being a rabbi and I'm a congregant. It's a very multi-layered, very deep relationship that has, so much complexity and nuance to it. So yeah, I think, it is, most people get a film like this when they're dead. It's but true. I wanted to film someone on the rise and film a leader who is really emerging and someone really we're witnessing him struggle through everything. The struggle is so visceral in this film.
It's true.
Of him really on camera in real time, live, really trying to navigate so many thorny questions, and unlike anyone else I know. There's who do I know who's from the Kennedys of Judaism, from 1,000 years of a dynasty, who also is a drag queen and is completely in, the contemporary world and someone who also has a deep pain and knows what it's like to, have had his grandfather be martyred, in a concentration camp. And, so Amichai has so many sides, and it's interesting because audiences are really connecting to very powerfully and viscerally to different pieces of his story for them.
what a leader he is, what an honest leader he is, and what a remarkable human he is.
Yeah, I just was out. We've been going to the theater every night and doing Q&As, like we'll be doing at the Lemley in LA, and it's just so amazing, just the reactions that people are having. I mean, this young friends, they're like, one of them is 19, 120, came to see the film. We were talking outside the theater after, and he said, my mom just died. We were just stunned, like, oh God, our heart broke. And we said, we're so sorry. And I watched Amichai at that moment, just with such compassion, such wisdom, such heart, just like hold this 19-year-old who just is like in very shock and grief in such a beautiful way as a rabbi. Yeah, just watching him in action with our audiences and all of the questions that they're bringing. I mean, we had a woman in Rome who said, I thought all Jews were fundamentalists. She was like, wow, you just like upended all my assumptions. It's like progressive Jewish vision, and you kind of broke my polarization. We had a woman who was she's a mom. She came to see the film earlier this week, and she just said afterwards, I have to bring my daughters. They're coming home for Thanksgiving. She comes back last night, brings her 2 daughters, one's 16. When the daughter goes off to the bathroom, her mom says, my daughter just told me that your film changed her life. Oh. She now feels like she could be a Jew. And then we had amazing. Like a Muslim Jewish couple who came to the film, and they said, we've never seen another couple like us. We've never seen it on screen. We never met another couple. We never feel like our love is validated in any way. And we have all those Catholic Jewish and Christian Jewish and Muslim Jewish, like all kinds of people coming. We had a person who said, I grew up in India and my grandfather was a Hindu priest, and he made us go to temple every day and pray for 3 hours a day. And she said, your film is so my story. I have been trying to figure out how to liberate myself from the ultra-conservative tradition that I grew up in and try to reimagine my own spirituality in my own way. Like the way that people are entering this film from so many angles and so deeply personal is just extraordinary.
Yeah, you look at, and what we talked earlier about it being, a film of the time, and yet it's also timeless. I refer to it as a sort of a modern day guide to the perplexed. In the sense that, in the 12th century, Maimonides is trying to reconcile, tradition with Aristotelian thought and, and answer a lot of the questions that we think of as modern questions. And I think they're, at some level, eternal questions, really. We just forget that because fundamentalism keeps taking over and pushing us in a direction of, no, don't ask those questions.
Right.
And yet I think within every tradition, you can find something like Maimonides, St. Augustine, whoever, who really says, no, you're going to wrestle with these issues. And let's focus in on one of the wrestlers because that's who Amichai is.
Right. And I think Trembling was so much like Trembling was never about the answer. It was always about the question, but it was really holding an issue, at the center. And here we're holding a human at the center who's like, really, we're watching this character journey over many, many years. And so Amichai never pretends. I mean, there's a moment in the film where he says, I don't know if I'm right. Maybe I don't know, but we won't know for another 100 years. And I love that moment. It's one of my favorite moments in the film because it's not a rabbi who just comes in with like, I know, I have certainty. Like, you're going to listen to me. I'm going to give you a sermon. It's someone who's like really like says with humility, there's big questions that we're dealing with. And I'm trying to find the answer like you are.
Yes.
And I think that's why people really respond to Amichai, because he's so honest about that. And, we don't always get that from our leaders. not every piece of the film is going to be comfortable.
Right.
But for people to sit in the discomfort and still embrace it and be moved by it, I think is like a big achievement for me. In really holding these questions.
No, that's important. I mean, it's what we need right now when so much of our world, most specifically social media, but other traditional forms of media are spoon feeding us stuff that's pushing us away from the center. Having a well balanced and thoughtful documentary that brings us back to the middle, I think is vitally important.
I mean, we had a family come yesterday. 72% of American Jews who are liberal, not Orthodox, are in love relationships with non-Jews. That's a staggering statistic. We're in a very different world than our grandparents. So we had a family come who was mixed, Jewish, not Jewish, and brought their kids, one of whom's adopted. And they sat for 3 hours as a family after the movie and talked about things they've never talked about in their lives. The film just opened up so much for this family. And yes, that's what film can do. That's what film can do. It's like a sounding board, a reflective space for us to really look at ourselves and question ourselves and have those conversations we've never had before. It's a springboard. And so, we're doing a whole project with this film. We're raising funds to do a whole Sabbath Queen education and impact campaign where we bring the film to high schools and college campuses.
Wow.
We're developing that very carefully, but there's so much potential for this film to open doors, move hearts and minds, really reach people, intergenerationally especially.
Yeah, in a way, it sounds like, you spent 21 years of your life making this, and you obviously are taking the long view, but it sounds like you're also approaching kind of its rollout very sensitively as well, and recognizing that you have this incredible document that can actually have just profound impact out there.
Yeah.
Well, and also the manner in which people interact with the film, I think. So
yes.
Let's talk a little bit.
Yeah.
There's no plan, necessarily immediate plan for the film to be on VOD. So if you want to see this movie, you're going to have to find it at a movie theater. It's playing now in New York. It's going to be opening in LA. A few days after we're recording this. For people who come across this online, though, they'll. How do they find it? When is the film coming to their community, and how do they find out about that?
Yeah, I opened Trembling Before God right after 9/11 at Film Forum. And we could smell 9/11 in the air. And I
That's right,
felt at that time what it meant to gather at the cinema. People wanted to be together. People wanted to hold each other, hug each other, question, cry, laugh. And I'm feeling the same thing with the film now coming out post-election. There's something about this time that people also want to be together. And they want to be in the cinema, which, for me and for many is a space of nourishing, a collective space of healing and nourishing. And there's something about this film being live and us doing all the Q&As that we're doing in the cinema and bringing in all kinds of people to lead conversations. And it's like someone called it medicine for the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what Sabbath Queen is. It's medicine for the moment that we're living in and that we're going to be living in over the next year or so. So I think that, yes, the in-person being able to interact with everyone together and with Amichai and me, is so important and has been like so meaningful for people.
Yeah, thrilling that it has a theatrical run. Thrilling that you can be there, and then help people navigate the experience afterwards with the Q&A. That's just fantastic.
And thrilling that, people can reach out to online, I assume, and say, hey, I want to have a screening in my community. How do I do this? I want to have a screening at a community center, at a school.
hello@sabbathqueen.com. Just email us. We have a very robust Instagram, Sabbath Queen Film. We're people are reaching out. I mean, I think in one day I got a theater in Coral Gables, a theater in Quincy, Massachusetts, or maybe I should name names. Whoops.
No, it's
but like a theater in Florida, a theater in Massachusetts, a inquiry from Cape Town, like someone in Pittsburgh. I mean, it's just the film is just,
exploding.
We've just gotten 5 awards for the movie. And what I love about those awards is that we got 5 very distinct awards. We got a queer award at Hamptons Film Festival. We got a Changemaker award at the Woodstock Film Festival. We got the best documentary from the Jewish Film Festival in the UK. We got an audience award at the Boston Jewish Film Festival, and we got a film jury award at the Zurich Film Festival.
That's so fantastic.
If that doesn't just speak to the range of this film,
that's perfect. That's just perfect. That's just amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I specifically sent someone your way because I told another distributor that I couldn't hold their film over at the Royal because we were opening Sabbath Queen, and they said, "Okay, I understand." By the way, someone else asked me, "How do I get in touch with it?" Because another theater asked about programming the film, so I gave them your booker's email address.
Oh, great!
But I'll also remember hello at Sabbath Queen. What was it again?
Hello at SABBATHQueen.com.
Hello at SABBATHQueen.com if you want to program this film into your theater or tell your local art house operator to program it.
Yeah. I guess I just, is there a way are there words for you to speak about how this film has changed you? It's 20 years, and that's hard to kind of get, but as you stand here at this moment, what has it done to you?
So I became more orthodox because of Trembling Before God. I would study Torah every week with this Hasidic gay man. I would do rituals and Shabbat with the orthodox. Definitely, one of the best names for an organization.
That's fantastic.
But it wasn't quite a fit. It wasn't me really. But Amichai then helped me open up again my own spiritual search. And he buried my father. He comforted my mom and I, in a year of mourning. He officiated my interfaith queer wedding with my husband, Eric. And, whether those are rituals of love, of death, of life, he's really helped me mark milestones and do them creatively and imaginatively with the tradition that I was born into, but wanted to make my own for the 21st century. So I think he's done that for me. And I think the filming process has gone hand in hand with that. At one point, we actually did have my wedding in the film. We did have my father in the film. We created me as a narrator of the story. That was an editing path that we took for 9 months and kept building me as a character, and then kind of threw it out. And, what emerged was his brother. He became a spine of the film. But yeah, I've really been so honored to have been personally, deeply transformed and touched as a filmmaker, a friend, and as a Jewish spiritual seeker.
Are there still times when you think, okay, I got to get the camera out and go back and go film Amichai and catch up with him, or we're sort of past that?
Well, we do have a very robust social media team, and we are filming a lot of these interactions and Q&As and testimonials. So, I think that's how I'm thinking of these pieces. I mean, one fun thing that we're doing at the Laemmle Royal is we're doing an editing masterclass that is being co-presented by Sundance Institute, and Kristen Feely's moderating it, and we have my editors and writers, and so we're peeking behind the curtain and showing people about what is the process of making a 21-year longitudinal documentary with 1,800 hours of footage and 1,100 hours of archival film and video and 1,000 photographs. And, I think we just did one in New York when we had been doing the theatrical, and I'm so excited to bring it to LA because I think creatives are just loving that. It's very rare. There's very few documentaries that are being made, over this time span with that level of relationship. It's quite a unique documentary during this time. So, yeah, the process is as interesting as as the product.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. How long did you go down the road of the narrated concept before you decided to back away from that?
Well, my editor said to me, Sandi, we need a narrator and we need it to be you. And I was like, no. They were like, yes. I said, no. I was like, I did not set out to make my Rabbi and me. So we kept experimenting and trying it, and I kept recording voiceover, and we would do test screening, and finally we did a test screening 9 months later, and a group of editors and filmmakers said, Sandi, we love you. Get out of the movie. So we threw all that work out. So it was a 9-month path. But sometimes, I was the scaffolding, and sometimes you build the building, you take the scaffolding off, and the building stands. So I was a part of the process, but didn't need me at the end.
It's the fact that you let the process sort of inform you, and not that you weren't pushing the process, you weren't trying to make a deadline or make a submission, or that you had both the financial wherewithal and or also then the kind of just the sort of artistic patience to be able to stay with it and let it keep talking to you is fantastic. And again, incredibly unique. I mean, it's very, very rare, but it obviously is, paid enormous dividends.
Yeah. Well, it does help that my husband is a meditation teacher. I have learned meditation from him. His shoulder is still wet from all my crying over the years. So I bet. I've had a lot of love and support from, my mom actually came to the theater, to IFC, and she came to Tribeca Film Festival. We brought her to the San Francisco premiere, and you tell an audience that your mom's in the room. Oh my gosh. Everyone goes crazy. They love her. She said, I didn't think this film would be done, and I didn't think I would live to see the end of this film.
That's awesome.
But she brought all of her 80-something friends, to see it at the opening, and it's just, I think she's filled with so much pride and so much love. And she just said to me, she said, your dad, who died 7 years ago, he said, your dad would be so proud of you, and he'd be so proud of this film. And I do feel like while we're screening here at all these cinemas, there's some kind of cinema in the sky, where my dad's there and the ancestors are there and Amichai's father is there, and they're all watching.
And the 38 generations, yes.
And the 38 generations. And I feel like they're celebrating, us up above while we're screening here below.
It feels that way when you watch it as well. It has there's a divine quotient.
In terms of as you were going along, it's not that you don't talk about the Holocaust. It is, present, but you didn't necessarily feel the need to, let's go back to the camps and shoot Amichai in the camp. Was that something that was discussed? Was it? Did you consciously say, no, I don't want to? I don't want that scene. I've seen it in too many other films.
Right. Well, we went back to Poland, as you see in the film, but Amichai has not been to his father's camps. I think it's too traumatizing for him. He's never been to Buchenwald. We talked about it. Yeah, I think that there's something interesting, because there is a generation now, a younger generation, that really doesn't know much about the Holocaust. And there's a rise of anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial that, is real. So I think it's interesting that this film kind of smuggles in the Holocaust into a drag story,
Yeah.
Like it actually has a way of being just one, it's not with like a point. It's organic and integral to Amichai's story and his wrestling. But it is interesting that, people are being exposed to this story of this family in a very, particular way. And that's so much about, how do we carry survival? You know, how do we carry like what it means to survive? And there's tools and there's lessons from Amichai's grandfather and his father and him, you know, about how we take that history, you know, for today, sort of internally and then communally and politically. And, you know, I think there's a lot there. So it is interesting because if this were just a Holocaust film, a lot of people wouldn't come and see it.
No, right.
No, of course not.
I think, look, it's a story of Amichai being 2G, of being second generation. And right now there's a lot of third generation and even maybe fourth generation. So, you know, we are at a different point in history, but history does repeat itself, you know, and we're in these cycles of trauma. You know, as a people and what we inflict on other people, you know, some might say that we're just, you know, inflicting, you know, trauma now on Palestinians. And there's this fear, just so much fear about survival and about victimization and disappearance that is playing out, you know, in our contemporary world. And there's a lot of pain, a lot of violence, and a lot of suffering. Yeah, I think, you know, us taking the film to Israel, you know, which we're going to do in a few weeks for the Israeli premiere, is going to be very potent and very powerful. And you know, there's a real debate there that we're going to enter into. So yeah, I think as a filmmaker, it's like I wanted to make a film about Amichai in the fullness and the 360 of his story. And that family story is so core to it. You know, Amichai has that weight on his shoulders. He carries it inside of him. You know, he's the ancestors, his grandfather, all the rabbis are hovering around him and inside him. And you know, and he's doing things in a different way, but he's connected. You know, he talks about the baby in the bathwater. He's like, how do we save the baby and get rid of the bathwater that we don't need?
Oh, that's so great. That's so great. What an amazing thing that this will play in Israel. That's wow. That's what a moment for this film to land there. That's really something. Really something.
Yeah, we're a little nervous about it, but
I understandably.
Well, I'm sure there'll be some other international audiences that are going to be have interesting and, you know, different reactions to the film. But
yeah, I mean, I've just taken the film to Germany. You know, we were in Doc Leipzig. I was in Amsterdam. You know, I was in Rome. We just played in London and, you know, in Zurich. I just did all of these festivals in the past weeks.
Jeez.
You know, and had really powerful reactions, you know, from audience members there. Really, really interesting. You know, in Germany, I met Jews of Germany of 2024. You know, people who are married to Jews in Germany in 2024. People who are creating a Shabbat
more Jews in
dinner.
Berlin today than there were before the war.
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting stat.
Yeah. So, you know, it's a real, we're just beginning a lot of the international work with the film. And there's a lot more to come in 2025. So yeah, this film is a global film and it will reach everywhere in the world. I would say we're breaking through. We're breaking through in an extraordinary way and reaching so many festivals, so many theaters, so much press, so much audience. So, but yeah, go ahead.
No, that's just great. I mean, there'll always be people who have whatever,
there are always people, and believe me, I hear from them.
But you do.
Can't tell you how many times, you know, I've been accused of being worse than Hitler and anti-Semitic for some movie that I've programmed, and my answer is always, it's a multiplex. There's a lot of different movies, you know. Mm-hmm. Find something that you support because it's there. And by the way, and maybe you should check something out that doesn't, you know, exactly check your box, because you may learn something. You may, gain greater understanding of that person that is your quote unquote enemy, or
right. Sort of discover some humanity in the process.
Yeah.
Right.
I saw that with Trembling. You know, it was like, okay, the verse in the Bible, according to some, prohibits homosexuality. But all of a sudden, it wasn't just black and white, letters on a page. It was like the story of human beings, and even rabbis were then being asked to deal with the human story, not just a verse. And I think that made Trembling have such power and change in the world. We changed people's lives with that film. It was a tipping point in the world, and I can feel that with this too. There's something about entering this human story in a film that just opens doors, opens portals. And so, people should allow themselves to go on that human journey.
Sandi, I can't thank you enough for beaming in from New York. I know you're on your way to LA. It's a privilege to talk to you, and it's a great film. And you spent 21 years making it. You may spend the next at least 10 or 20 sort of talking about it, because it's so resonant and so just extraordinary. So thank you.
Well,
thank you.
I have to say it is like a real homecoming to come back to the Lau-Lavie and to, Greg and the whole, Lau-Lavie family. I've grown up in it, I was, this is a midlife film.
Yeah.
And there's something about this film, mapping the whole growth of my life from Trembling to Sabbath Queen. And so I really feel like I'm just so excited to, just be in the Lau-Lavie cinemas again and greet people.
Look, we love showing first films from filmmakers and giving them that experience, but even sweeter is welcoming people back with their second, hopefully third and fourth films.
Thank you.
So thank you. For everybody out there who's enjoyed our conversation, please hit the subscribe button. Continue to follow us at Inside the Arthouse, where we're going to have some more provocative discussions with filmmakers coming up soon.
Well said.
Sorry, I had to do that.
No, that's great.
Got to get it in there once an episode.
Yeah, we want to have as large an audience, Sandi, as we can to promote the heck out of what you're doing. So anyway. Thank you all. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.
Inside the Arthouse was produced by Miles McCreary, Thomas Cassetta, and Raphael Sparge. And our on-site producer is Noreen Dickerson and filmed at the Lau-Lavie Royal Theatre. The episode was edited by Gabriel Lau-Lavie. Show open edited by Rick Pratt. Music by Isabel Engman and Gerardo Garcia Jr. Graphics by Janet DeAngelis. Marketing by Stephanie Peters and Matthew King. Find out more at InsideTheArthouse.com.